One of the best discoveries of 2024 came when House of Protection made their debut at the very end of April, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Aric and Stephen back to Wall of Sound. Lads, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
You know, anything you guys do, we're going to touch. It is absolutely incredible to see you guys still continuing on in the music industry with all of these projects you're associated with. Talking about April 30, your lives changed when the debut of House of Protection came out. It's just been shy of 8 months. Tell us, has the impact of that launch met or exceeded all expectations?
I felt like it exceeded. I mean, not that we sold ourselves short, but when you sing for the first time, you have no fucking idea how it's gonna go. It's been really cool. I think, especially, it's one thing to see it on the internet. It's another thing to go play the 2 shows that we did and get to actually share the music with the audience. After that, it kind of felt like, okay, this is real. This isn't just us posting music on the internet and jamming together, because we did a year of writing before anyone heard anything. So sort of whole build-up period, being anxious to get it out, and then it finally being released, and the audiences being so cool and the show selling out. That's all been as great as we possibly could have hoped for.
I guess it's that cathartic release as well too, because it's no surprise, there's no secret. You guys came from a tumultuous ending of your last act into this band here, and I think everyone was anticipating what you would do, how it would sound, how it would come across. And the first approach we got with your new material was obviously the statement piece, Supposed to Hurt. Impeccable drum and bass combo. It was different to what you had done previously. However, when you think about your history and what you've done, obviously in Night Verses and The Chariot, it's not too far removed. Was that kind of the intention of going into the studio to not recreate those sounds of the past, but kind of create something different in a modern era?
Sort of. I mean, we had some we had a vibe and sounds and references that we wanted to honor in this one that were just naturally different from our old projects. So we knew it was gonna be different. We thought about doing just a heavy thing at first, and we just didn't think it was the time really for that, just to come out with just a straight up kind of heavy project. But Aric and I, we have so many of the same bands and things in common that we love and look up to, and really like the energy and vibes, and we just, I don't know, we just were this is, it's not going to be Night Verses or The Chariot or Cancer Bats or any of that. This is going to be our own thing. We, not that we set out to reinvent the wheel or anything, but we're trying to just do something that we know isn't really happening, with the combination of references that we have.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too. And I guess, honing in on sounds from early upbringings and the alternative scene. I mean, being one, when that came out, immediately my brain went straight to Underworld. And I remember seeing them at a big day out or a music festival in Australia when I was completely off my head. And I was like, this is fucking excellent. This throws me back to that time. And being one of my favorite, new bands of the year, it was really great to see you honing in and throwing back to a sound that no one's really touched in the past 2 decades or whatever it might have been.
Thank you, man. That song definitely came up because that band definitely came up because we made a list when we were first starting of 50 songs that we loved where the singing wasn't traditional. It wasn't these guys hitting these high notes or these metal screams, but more people using their voice in a unique way that we thought we could sort of go for. Because again, this is new territory for us. And at the same time, there's something about that era and a lot of UK-based music at that time that really interested me and Steve. I mean, we love everything from Block Party to Prodigy, and trying to find a way to harness those influences but not lose an ounce of energy that we want to get on stage. That was sort of the challenge, because when you're bringing up the other bands, it's we never want to get on stage and play a boring show, but at the same time trying to take those influences and up the energy to what we want was it was a challenge. So once we sort of heard It's Supposed to Hurt come together, I think it was a relief. We were like, okay, this is the direction. We don't need to stress now that we can do this. We can write a record. And then Being One was sort of the byproduct of getting to work with Jordan after that, and then seeing, okay, this is sort of our full potential. Because we initially wrote It's Supposed to Hurt with me, Nick, and Steve, Nick from Night Versus, and then Jordan stepped in to add production and give us some like, just like little tips with things to do structurally. But being one was with Jordan, and all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, we didn't know Steve could sing like that. So it was a cool process to kind of like realize our potential throughout the recording of the EP.
And that's daunting as well too. I mean, for yourselves, what's more daunting? Starting a new band and essentially starting from scratch again, or trying new things like singing different notes, singing different performances in this group, and then, hopefully not alienating the fans that have followed you, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to take this, or?
They're both pretty anxiety-inducing things. Like the idea of starting a band from the ground, I just think, like, personally, just at my age and where I'm at in my life, like when we started, it was just like it was a mountain in my way. Like it just felt like I think to this day it's been the biggest obstacle to climb to kind of like just kind of where I was mentally too, like finding the strength to kind of like get in my car, meet with Aric like almost every day, do this thing I've never done. Like it's a weird thing when I actually sit back and think about it, which I don't do very much often anymore. But like it was hard. And yeah, it's like you're like, I don't know, like because we always loved the stuff we were making, but that's the challenge with like doing something different. You're like, I don't know really what people are gonna vibe with. Who knows anymore? Like actually, like no, like I can't ever guess what people are vibing with really. Like when something blows up, sometimes I'm just like, I would have never guessed that that was what takes off. So you don't really know what you're setting yourself up for sometimes. But I'm just extremely grateful for how we've been received, even through a lot of that self, I don't want to call it doubt, just kind of some of the like the mental hardships, I think, of starting something new and doing something new.
I knew that was your experience. I fucking loved it. I loved the minute that we heard it was new. We've talked about this. It felt like the first band practice you'd ever been to. Like we were just like, oh, holy shit. This is completely new territory. So yeah, I know Steve had a long drive from LA down to like where me and Nick were in Orange County. But if anything, I think it was like a healthy balance for Steve to like come in with his energy and me to be like overly like, let's fucking do this every single day. And then those things sort of mellow out. It was really nice that Steve was such a good singer. It made this whole process. He could have had a voice that we just hated, and we would have been like, all right, well, this is what we're working with.
Talking about your energy, we've seen you guys performing on stage, and it's hard to encapsulate what you do in words. You have to see it to believe it. It's like a gym session where there's no holds barred. You're really fucking yourselves up and pushing yourselves to the brink of, exhaustion. Does that encapsulate in the studio as well when recording?
Sometimes. I think that's another, like, personally, like in the Chariot, like we kind of just almost exclusively relied on energy, like high energy. Whereas in this project, not everything calls for high energy, And I think that's been a really fun, unique thing to sort of like explore personally, like just songs like Being One and some of the newer songs, even really like Fuse, like the chorus of Fuse is like not really like vocally, it's not like heavy or like belting. So just like exploring some of like the different ways you can kind of like convey a feeling without screaming or like without in the back of your mind thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like go nuts with this part live, just kind of like envisioning like performing something with a mild energy has been a very kind of like new thing for me with this project. Obviously there's a lot of high energy with our songs, and I think that's going to always be our like front foot forward. I mean, that's just who we are as musicians and artists. So yeah, when it comes to recording, it's there for sure. But also I think what makes this interesting is the fact that there are like the kind of like new mild vibes that I've never really had to do in any other project.
We're like learning as we go because a lot of that stuff gets determined by the rhythm. Like if you go to a Chariot show or a Prodigy show, the movement is different. Like if you're doing anything drum and bass or like electronic focused where there's real repetition, it's a lot less spazzy and it's like a lot more like focused and monotonous. And I think we're like learning that as we're on stage. Like it affects how you breathe, it affects how the next part drops. So like we want both of those things, but there's definitely moments where we'll go to play a new song and we're like, oh, there's no Chariot movements that go with this. You know what I mean? Like it comes out of you and you see the video later and you're like, oh yeah, this is new shit for us. So it's fun. And I think it hits hardest when we see how it affects the audience. So much of this music is more consistent and like we played a new song in the UK called Fire, and the audience was jumping for every single hit of the song and they'd never heard it. And like I don't know if I've ever had that experience playing a new song in the last like 15 years. So it's fucking cool to see.
And that's a really cool translation of what you're doing in studio and how you produce it on stage. I mean, like, you guys are already getting yourself out of your comfort zone by writing and producing and performing slower songs like that. So the fact that it's resonating with the UK fans is exceptional. And because we're all the old prisoners from the UK who got sent to Australia, we'll get to see some of this when you come down under next year with Bad Omens and Poppy. Now, that tour itself doesn't seem like work for you guys. It seems like summer camp in Australia. Is that right?
Kinda, yeah, low key.
That's a good way to describe it.
It really does feel like that. Poppy is a good friend of mine. Noah from Bad Omens is a good friend of mine. I'm very excited for it to be in that company for our first tour. Like, I think it really just does feel good to like know everyone. And I also love playing Australia. It's been a long time since I've been down there to play a show.
Was it like 2019?
100% 2019 download, yep.
Jesus.
Was that it? Yeah, it was. That was it.
You didn't go with Cancer Pats, right?
No, I didn't. But I love playing shows down there. It's just a different energy. I feel like Australians just want to have fun. Like that's like priority number one. People are less likely to kind of just stand and stare with their arms crossed. They would much rather go crazy.
There's no like grace period. That's every time I've ever played Australia, they're in like song one. And I feel like as a band, it's like, that's such a relief. It's like, why waste time? Enjoy the entire set. Like all of the shows I've ever played in Australia, it felt like that.
And being the lineup that it is, you have the rights to essentially launch yourself with this new project. I mean, throwing back to 2019, you played the sideshow for Download Festival in a venue called The Bright Side, which is like a couple hundred capacity, to then go from there to the River Stage, which, you know, has been home to so many defining moments for metalcore and post-hardcore and those kind of bands in those adjacent genres. I mean, you have a much bigger stage, a much bigger chance to connect with these audiences, but also you've got the fans that are coming along for Bad Omens and Poppy, knowing that they're sort of connected in that realm. But being friends and being the close relationship you have, I kind of feel like you're not going to be too far removed from the bands on the lineup. Like, people will see you playing and understand, oh, this fits perfectly. Like, you're well within that realm.
Totally. Yeah, I think so. Especially Poppy. Like, Poppy kind of has no rules genre. And I feel like we damn near have none. And I think that'll continue to sort of expand. So yeah, I think it'll work.
Well, it's going to be a good testing ground, and eventually, hopefully, there might be some sideshow action or something like that. We'll sort of see in the next few weeks, whatever comes out from that. But talking about your friendships and your relationships in the music industry, Architects have their new album coming out next year as well, and you're also collaborating on a song on the album called Brain Dead. What can you share about this song, and how did that collaboration come about?
I don't know that we can share much about the song. I think it's just got to be one of those things where you hear it and you're like, okay, totally. But I met Sam when I was 17 on one of my first tours in England. And I've just been an Architects fan ever since. We're homies. And Jordan Fish was working on their album. And I guess when they were writing the song, they were talking about having us on it. And they sent it over. We're like, this is sick. And yeah, we just jumped on it. And
I think one of the coolest things about Architects is they asked us, they had heard some of our material early, like before it had come out, because they were also recording with Jordan. And they asked us before anything came out. And for them to be on board like that was fucking awesome. So I feel like when you're a new band and you don't know like whose industry's got your back, them just being like, hey, do you want to do this right off the bat was so fucking cool. But yeah, I mean, not that we're like elitist or anything. Everybody's cool to do their own thing, but we don't like the sound of everything. So we're only going to collaborate on stuff that we really genuinely enjoy.
Wonderful. Well, we're looking forward to see what you guys do following this big year, this big initial relaunch back into the industry. If GALORE was the sampler and charcuterie board tester for House of Protection, what does 2025 look like?
2025 looks like 2025 looks like a Michelin star Southern barbecue cuisine experience. So, because you can have Southern barbecue, bad Southern barbecue is fine. Like even bad Southern barbecue, it's like it's fine. It does what it's supposed to do. But Michelin star Southern barbecue, I'm talking courses. That's levels. You know what I mean? There's love to this, to the flavor. It hits you more than once, and you're like, oh yeah, totally. Like this is. You're like licking, you're kissing your fingers, and you're like, and then by the time it's all over, there's nothing to do but fall asleep because it's just so heavy in your stomach, and you just go to sleep and you wake up at some awkward hour like 2 a.m. and you think there's something wrong with you, but there's nothing wrong with you. You just had a really heavy meal at a weird time. That's what 2025 is.
I've never heard of an anticipation for music explained like that, and with that said, I'm going to leave it right then and there. Aric and Steve, House of Protection has had an incredible year so far. We haven't even seen what you guys can do yet, and we can't wait to see you both down under in Australia next year and what comes next. Thank you for taking the time to chat with Wall of Sound.
Thank you, Browny.
Thank you, man.